Hey everyone, welcome back. betspertsgolf here for two golf tournaments. We'll start with the 2024 Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. We will touch here on Puerto Rico as well. Back in the saddle after a week off last week. Great to have him back. Andy Molitor, what's going on, bud?
Finally get to wear one of my hats. I have a few for certain tournaments. We get to the 3M, I'm wearing a hat. So you get to the players, I'm wearing a hat. But I did buy a really nice one for the U.S. Open too. Just such a good logo, like the little putter boy with the very good logo. But yes, excited to be back. Fun golf. Sucked. I didn't really see the weather coming because I was at the combine, so I was paying less attention to golf than normally would. The weather kind of hit me as a surprise on Sunday as I was home. I'm like, oh, finally, I'm just gonna sit. I'm done traveling. Sit down, watch golf, and oh shit, like horns blowing, like we're done. And then you really look at like the leaders and how much they had left, and it's like, oh, this is not happening. Like we're still in February. The days are getting longer, or March rather. But the days weren't quite long enough. So
Yeah.
Monday finish was fine. They got it in plenty of time. Sorry to anyone who had Shane Lowry. I think that was a good bet. He played really well. He looked mad. I know you did. I know you brought him up on the show. He looked pretty mad about that water ball. It's fun. That is the fun part about golf. It's more fun when it's someone you bet against, but it is fun watching guys just lose their shit. Golf is hard. We all do that on the course once in a while. I just can't believe we hit a shot like that. So, congrats to Neiman for just like trucking. People have to really start to think about like how much those wins matter, and because it's easy to see like, oh, he's playing just much better golf than other people, and there's some damn good players on live right now. So it's going to be interesting the next 5 weeks as we get a couple more live events. We get obviously the whole Florida swing and get into the big one. The big one is starting to loom. I'm already seeing, the people posting about getting the package where you get like 5 styrofoam cups and a half a quart of like egg salad for $100, and people still buy that because it's the Masters. Like, if you want, DM me. I will mail you a whole quart of pimento. I'll make myself for less than the Masters, and you can have your own Masters experience. But Eckroat. Let's talk about a guy we bet a bunch last summer real quick. I don't even want to bring him up either. He's a guy we bet at bigger numbers, and it got a little dicey at the end, but he played good golf too. And I think the story, besides Eckroat winning or anything, is really how easy the course played when it softened up, and they added they added one stroke essentially to that par 5, and it's like, shit, man, people are kind of dump trucking this course.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was soft, and changing basically one of the harder par 4s into what ended up basically being the easiest hole in the course definitely changed the dynamic of scoring conditions there a little bit. And, the wind was never really a problem either. And that's, some of these courses are designed for that. But, that's kind of the lone defense. And if you make it really super duper hard without it, and that actually adds to creating the firm and fast piece of it, all that stuff kind of just kind of stacks up against it. And so it didn't happen, and it played easier. And, the Eckroat piece, we bet him relentlessly last summer. So that's a little bit frustrating. At the same time, I was never really considering Austin Eckroat this week. No. So I can't be that mad about it, where I feel like this week I'm kind of like paralyzed by the board because I have a bunch of guys I like to bet on. I haven't bet on any of them yet. Someone's going to be left off the card, and that would be a situation where I'd be more frustrated. It just, it was a great event. We talked about it. I talked about it last week. Was I was going to be lighter pre-tournament because I thought it was a very, just the nature of this event. You can have these drastic swings because of all the water that's in play. So you can have guys come from deep down the board. EVR tried to do it because, not because anyone else got in trouble per se, but just because there could be scoreable conditions if the weather is nice. And yeah, so that was tough. The Lowry stuff was tough. I mean, I talked about him on the show last week. He was 35. By the time Wednesday afternoon came around, he drifted out to 50. So I took 50 pre-tournament, added to my card, and felt pretty good about it because just the course history, strokes gained Florida, all that other stuff that we had looked at, through, Twitter and some other stuff that we had put out there. He made a ton of sense. The course history was nice. the sleeping in your own bed narrative and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, look, winning golf tournaments is hard. Winning golf outrights is hard as well.
It's very hard.
I had told you, like, I don't often consider the cash out option on Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon. I did. I stared at it.
Lowry on a Sunday. Lowry on a Sunday on this side of the Atlantic is, I mean, a Monday, I guess, but same thing. And truthfully, too, like my final point is, it's not like Eckroat was the last guy off the card,
right,
or the first guy off the card. I wasn't strongly considering him with this field, so that is, congrats. We're happy for him. It wasn't ever going to happen for us. So I didn't feel that much FOMO. The newsletter play that was a fun one to track. Like I had Fitzpatrick over Kim at a dog price.
Okay.
And it was just 3 rounds of, every 6 holes they'd flip flop who had the lead. And then Sunday, Kim just shat himself. Like it was glorious. Fitzpatrick played very well. Ended up, I had Cam Young as my one and done in most of my one and dones.
Okay.
It would have been nice to see him make, like 6 more putts that were very makeable and win the tournament. But getting a top 5 when the leaderboard looks the way it looks was pretty nice, all things considered, for one and done. I'm in several one and dones where there's a fair amount of people in it and no one has picked a winner yet. Like no one has chosen. Obviously, like I bet a lot of them are that way.
Yeah.
Like nobody has picked a winner yet, but maybe this week it's going to be a big name. Let's get into the Arnold Palmer Invitational. You want to kind of talk about the differences? We're going to do this a few times this year, and we're going to have to differentiate between the 2 kinds of signature events, because this is one of the 3 of the 8 where we actually have the cut, right?
Yeah, they've protected a few of them. I know, Tiger wanted that. They said they did the same thing for API here. So we do have really small fields. Like this was a signature event last year with a reduced field of 120, and now we're down to 69 players in this field. We have 54 of the top 55 eligible players committed. Finau taking the week off. I'm surprised Finau's not down in Puerto Rico. I could see him doing something like that. But yeah, we do have a scenario where the cut is set after round 2 for the low 50 and ties. And then we also have that same element that we had, the old like Augusta rule we had actually at the Genesis as well. Yeah. If you're within the 10 shot within 10 shots of the leader, you continue on as well. So we can have a scenario. I think we had like maybe 15 or so guys get chopped at the Riv. I think we probably it can vary
similar.
Yeah, so like
I harken back to that tweet. Somebody went back and looked at Riv and be like, how many people would have made it through on this cut? And normally it was just like, 50 to 60 guys, and then one year it would have been like 72 people would have made it through.
Right.
Just once in a while there's going to be some compacted scoring. I don't think it plays to it, but again, it is going to be hard to get cut here.
Not great if you get cut here. Yeah, especially if there's someone gets out to a nice early, Thursday, Friday and kind of runs away a little bit. That'll I think increase the cut line. So, definitely, tough to make the cut bets here. But, probably something that's more relevant for DFS sake, because you're probably going to have more 6s, and to have a scenario where you're kind of drawing dead with maybe a 4-6 or a 5-6 is going to be a tough.
Well, yeah, there's I'm not proclaiming to be a DFS expert. In fact, I'm horrible at it, but you do see that where guys have a 5 of 6 cash decently. You're not going to win, but you can find cash if you really nail your 5. Doesn't feel like it's that kind of week where there's going to be just such a huge amount of 6 of 6 compared to a normal week based on how big
you're dead.
How big of a chunk. Like you're just dead. Like just stop looking at those lineups at that point. So
yeah, you're going to need like the top, your other 5 are going to have to be all top 10, and you're probably still a little bit dead, to be honest. So yeah, so we're continue Florida swing here is
Bay Hill Club and Lodge. Let's get into the course.
We have I think this is a adult version of what people expected PGA National to be, basically, regardless of what happens with the weather.
Good
this is, I think that probably plays right. We have thick rough, thicker than what we had last week and thicker than what PGA National usually does. We have firm and fast conditions here on these Bermuda greens. We got obviously a ton of bunkers, a ton of water that comes into play. And then again, we have the wind factor that can make this all a mess. And we've seen that kind of play itself out in terms of what the winning score is here. We don't usually even approach the low teens, typically 12 or worse. 5 of the last 6 years, we had that real bad weather year a handful of years ago with Hatton at like 4 under. Typically around single digits here too, because this is a difficult golf course. Some of the notes and the quotes that Ron has in his preview, which is up on the site, you can't fake it around here. It is mentally challenging. You need the whole bag. And this is just a course that I think, people got real butthurt last week when people were putting up low scores at PGA National. It's going to get real bad if people are kind of blowing around Bay Hill, which I don't expect to happen here this week.
No, it's funny too. When I went on with Andy Lack last week to talk about PGA National, I said, and I told him afterwards, after I let him go for a while, I was trying to bait him into talking shit about Nicholas as like a designer, because he has in the past in certain other courses. But I said, I baited him with like, why aren't we playing majors here? And, he had a really well thought out reasoning for that. And then it's funny because we said after that, like, it might just be, we might see some low scores here anyway with the changes and the conditions, and then it turned out to be like that and then some, not the 10 under kind of average that you saw. Obviously a lot of people eclipse that. So hopefully with the conditions and what we're seeing here and just kind of the architecture and build of this course, we finally get a tough one. Like you said, what is it, so 72, about 7,400 yards.
Yeah.
This
plays a little bit longer. Because there are some forced,
a
handful. Ron and I touched on this on the Monday first look show, where it's not. Last week was a less than driver course. There was more naturally forced layups. There's not. This is a good mix. There's just some holes that have it, some holes that don't. So, it's probably middle of the pack there. So there's going to be some spots where it naturally plays a little bit longer. You're going to have, I believe, you have more 200 plus yard approaches here than anywhere else.
Yes.
And some of those are like 250 plus. So, some definitely longer clubs than, not a wedge fest, not a lot here that's under 125 unless you're laying up on some of the holes too. So you definitely factoring some of that in. And again, thick rough. And there's been some changes here. We had a new superintendent a handful of years ago. That Ron touched on this again in the article too. And some players don't love it as much. You had some basically shave down around the greens if you were to miss. And these are hard greens to hold. Greens and reg definitely lower than the tour average event here. But they've kind of kept that thick rough all around in terms of, not the shaved runoffs, which I think players find that to be a little bit more challenging in terms of like around the green skills. The stuff is going to catch it a little bit. There's, I think, a little bit more variance in terms of how your around the green game comes out of thick, rough play versus like short grass scrambling. But again, that's something we can capture and kind of dig into in the rabbit hole when we dig into. But it hasn't massively impacted scoring because scoring is still staying pretty low here too. But just something to look out at. So they also changed some of the runoffs around the hazards. So they actually shaved down rough around bunkers and shave down rough around the water. So you get some really good drives that just kind of get some rollout. If this is playing really firm and fast, that kind of kick themselves into the drink or kick themselves into the bunkers too. That could be
it's a kind of a yes, no kind of drive where you see that where some of these places where we have long rollouts, long runouts, and obviously some tilt to some of the places they're going to land. Like you mentioned too, it plays longer, than even what we're listing it as, because of not only the weather can kind of affect that, but the approach shots and some of the forced layups, and then just the fact that none of the par threes are like short or easy. So should be pretty tough. People have pointed this out. Ron had quotes about this. I want to say Jordy was a big one in his preview article, saying like, you have to play this course. You have to know your way around it. Course history is going to come into play here. The wind, like you mentioned already, will, and maybe is going to come into play here. And like the greens is the biggest thing for me. Not only like you mentioning the runoffs, the shaved slopes, but like the sloping of the greens in general are just going to make them harder to hold, on some of these longer approach shots, as you're not able to just catch it and check up and stay where you want to be. That's why greens in regulation is going to be so tough here. And again, it's Bermuda. You gotta be a guy who can find your read, find your breaks, and putt well in Bermuda grass. So it's another week of that. And again, it's a smaller field. All the best golfers. Should be fun. This is a solid one. This is up the list for me in the early years. Like this is the best back-to-back weeks, I think. That doesn't involve a major. Like you, and granted, you can say like, oh, some of the lead ups to the major suck. Dude, last year, remember the tournaments after every major? It was like always a really good one. So
Yeah,
they do have some good back-to-back weeks, but non-major wise, API players is so good. So enjoy it. Don't make too many plans with the family. Watch some golf this weekend. What else we got?
To me, really, outside of even considering majors, because the majors obviously were in a rotation, but like, I mean, obviously going from you go from Augusta to Harbortown, that's fantastic. And obviously anytime Augusta's involved in, any equation, that kind of is a changer. But yeah, I mean, Bay Hill to Sawgrass, I kind of love it. It's a great combination here. So
any other thoughts on the field?
No, it's a tough one, man. Like you said, it's the board's compressed. It's tougher in signature events anyway. And now we're in a spot with 69 guys in the field, right? So like, you card flips over on Monday morning and you want it to be a little bit different than it is, but like expectations have to be that you're going to have a bunch of really good golfers at 20, 25 and shorter. And those are hard prices to click at times, but like we just don't have, the section that we like to bet into often, right? I would say maybe we would just roughly classify that as 30 to 60. Like that exists here, but those guys are the actual win equity, considering the top of the field here, considering the course history mattering, and considering how good the course history is for both Scotty and Rory. That makes it actually even more tricky here too. So that becomes a challenge for this week.
Yeah, and as you mentioned too, it's trickier. You got to think about it. It is relative. Like it's not looking at the odds board for your normal 120, 150 person field and saying like those guys those 30 to 60 guys that me and you obviously love week in and week out. Bombs are going to be different. Like you have to think about this quite a bit differently. It is the small field event that we didn't used to get very often. It used to be just a couple times a year you had to think about this, but obviously you have to think about it a lot more. And same thing kind of goes with one and done as I roll into that. It is a signature event. You need to use a big name. This is a huge purse. Like you are going to, again, me and Cal always use for, a deck of cards as the analogy. Like you're burning a face card, maybe an ace 2 weeks in a row here, because these are huge, huge purses. Anytime there's a signature event, you don't want to get cute. It has to be probably at worst, somebody who's in the top 20 of what you're betting, what you're listing as your top golfers, more likely top 15. This is going to pay. And next week is definitely going to pay more than a major. The players is a massive purse. So think about that. And obviously if you're having trouble or you want to incorporate a little more data into your one and done, obviously check out our sponsor, Pool Genius, where you can get customized pick advice on your pool size, based on your pool size, tournaments, and your past picks, with data-driven pick grades highlighting your best strategic options. Just save hours researching and tracking picks across multiple pools. And for now, again, limited time, free trial. You can go try it out for free. Check it out. The link is in the show notes. Again, Pool Genius. Outsmart your competition, win your pool. I have no idea who I'm using this week. Also, I have no idea really what the betting card looks like outside of one specific name. And I haven't looked at your model yet. I did build my first run of like an expert model this week. You can check those out over on the site. I know Ron has put one together. I think Andy Lack has put one. I want to say I might have been the last one to put together an API one. I was a little slow sleepwalking into the week, but be interesting to hear what you want to start with this week.
Yeah, I'm going to probably build a new one. So that's we can do the one that do some of that in the show. It's what I love, building multiple, and try not to overwhelm people and turn some of them off. There's not like a million expert models to look into, but if you are going to watch this for the first time, you want to get access to all that we're doing here at BetSperts Golf, all the premium content. You want to get in the Discord, DFS plays, all the great charting and splits, from Ron, PGA Splits 101, you need to get a BetSperts Golf subscription. And the rabbit hole is involved in that. We are going to walk through and build that model in the rabbit hole. We are way too cheap, and it is going up. We're going to make the, just being honest, we're going to make the, raise the prices here shortly. But you can still circumvent all that through our partners here at Vivid Picks. Vivid Picks is a DFS pick'em site, like some of the other ones that you're probably more familiar out there. But Vivid Picks, similar to Vivid Seats, obviously a company you know about, secondary ticket market. They have a first deposit match up to $250. If you'd like to play these DFS games, that is by far the best in the industry. You can use our promo code here, betspertsgolf. Use the link to download the Vivid Picks app. $5 deposit and play. Simply $5 is all you need to do. I will have Vivid Picks plays for you on Wednesday. They've been putting out some stuff Tuesday night, Wednesday morning to even give you some picks to play. All you need to do is put in a $5 entry. Within 48 hours, you're going to get an email back telling you how to access our site for the rest of the 2024 season for free. No additional cost. It is only available in about 28 states. They are listed here down below. If you're not in one of those states, simply DM one of us, Ron, or our house account, BetSperts Golf on Twitter. We will give you a very, very competitive promo code to let you get access, get a discount on a month to try us out, or to take advantage of a really, really cheap annual discount that you want to lock in before those prices go up. So hit us up on Twitter if you can't get access to it, or just go to the App Store, download the Vivid Picks app, and get started. Use that promo code BetSperts Golf.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, 28 states. We did have some people ask in the DMs, like, hey, I'm really close to the border. I'm like, yes, you can drive across the border, sign up, enter, deposit $5, enter, play, and you'll get the promo code. Like, they'd love to see you play more than that, but that is absolutely something that will work. So feel free. And yeah, the biggest part of what you're going to get outside of just the, the Discord and some of the premium articles is the, what's the word? The gem, the crown jewel of the site, the rabbit hole, the, mixed condition player model that we're going to play with every week. And yeah, we're going to start from scratch. You can see up at the top left there, it is the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Golfers displayed. If you pull that down, you can switch to, I keep wanting to say Punta Cana. It is not Punta Cana, it is Puerto Rico. But if you pull that down, you can create models for Puerto Rico as well. Obviously the Cognizant still in there. You can create a model if you wanted. Maybe not the worst thing to do. Go try to create a model that that gives you closest to the leaderboard. I don't
you can get some Austin Eckroat in your top 10.
Yes. See how you can manipulate stats to make Austin Eckroat number one. But like I said, you can obviously do one for the Puerto Rican Open. You can do one for the API. We're going to do API for now. We'll talk a little Puerto Rico later. I'm going to build a model for Puerto Rico later today or tomorrow, but I doubt we're going to build 2 custom models today. We'll start with Bay Hill, the stats that matter. Where do you want to go with this, Ryan?
Yeah, people can actually go in here. You can see here, view expert rankings, and you could see all the stuff that we've done. You can see obviously Andy here, Andy Lack as well, Matt Vicenzi, who has his own podcast. He also has his model posted here for people to see. I also have right here. I probably should have named it something different because PRO sounds like I'm like a professional, but it's the Puerto Rican Open model. Looks like I'm the only one that has one in here, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there, but we'll talk about the Puerto Rico. But yeah, this is always available for you to check out and see, hey, what are these guys using? What stats should I be looking at that I maybe haven't that they are looking at too, which I think is a really cool resource for you as well. Again, this is the data, right? So it's not the answers to the test, but again, it's hoping to, fill out your player pools, your betting cards, and, try to find a better way to build those with stats that matter here. So yeah, Ron does a great job.
I don't know who's going to win. I don't know the stats that matter. You do. Here's the data. Right. Have fun. Rip around, find it. I'm looking into that too, because I'm sure somewhere in the back end, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Somewhere in the back end, I'm sure we have the data behind like every finished model that any user's made, hundreds and maybe thousands a week that are getting made. I wonder if we can pull that all and then just regression, do a regression test and see like who had the best model last week.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That would be super. I feel like the dev team's going to kill me if I ask to do stuff like that. But
yeah,
that would be super interesting. We should have like an award, like who made the model that ranked the players closest to the actual finishing positions after the golf tournament was, and then send them something every week. Like,
I'm not gonna lie, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, you're the smartest guy. You're the smartest guy. If you could just download them all like in a mass file of CSVs. I mean, I know a guy that works here that absolutely could just quickly test that against the the final standings and see where we're at. That would be super interesting to see like who the smartest person was that, or the luckiest person was that week.
Yeah. Well, we're giving the dev team too much right now. We'll let them finish their workload. That'll get us through the end of the year. But I think that's a really interesting idea moving forward. So yeah, Ron does a good job on his course preview. In the very bottom, there's a section of key rabbit hole filters. And I think this is a week that there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. We could literally take 2 hours today looking at different splits here to break this down. But yeah, I mean, you just built it. Any inklings of how you'd want to start this in terms of what we've done in the past? Like last week we kind of anchored around strokes gained Florida in a way. You can do that in a couple different ways by course region or event season. You're kind of looking at that, or do you want to just kind of take a baseline of either strokes gained total, tee to green, ball striking like we typically do?
Yeah, just like ball striking to start, or
okay,
if you wanted to go more granular, I like to keep these kind of
high level,
but then throw in a fun one at the end, because again, this is just something we're doing more of an illustrating how to use it and what we're looking at this week. Whereas we're going to mention with every one of these like 6 other ways to do this.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so we should do.
I don't know. Do we need an anchoring stat this week? It's the best of the best.
It's true.
So that's the thing. We don't want to be like, hey, here's a guy who's ranked 200th in the world. He's in the field for the Cog or whatever. We're calling it the Cog last week.
I like the Cog.
And he is no top 20s, no top 30s, but he does this one thing that we're going to weight very well, and the rest of his game sucks, and it pulls him up the field. That's why we always say anchoring stat, and we start with just like strokes gained total for the last 6 months, because basically all you're saying is form. It's going to almost, it's going to be terribly close to like the OWGR or just, Data Golf's rankings or something. So that's why we say an anchoring stat like that. Whereas I don't know that we need one this week. It is the creme de la creme. You're not going to have, guys throwing in some weird stats on us. I would just start with, let's start looking at what matters here. And it is driving, total driving, distance plus accuracy, maybe a little heavier on accuracy. It is long irons. It is irons 200 plus. Mm-hmm. It's maybe Bermuda putting. Maybe we throw in some putting stats this week, and, probably some scoring stuff. Like we said, it's not major golf, but it's getting closer to it. It is bogey avoidance. It is 3-putt avoidance. It is keeping your shit together and getting to 5 under.
I like it. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in there that like we have a multitude of ways for you to capture those types of things. So, well, let's go here. I'll go into the condition section. If you're seeing this for the first time, again, you can download any of these into a CSV. I already showed you that you can look at the expert rankings. View section is really crucial, along with the filter by condition section. Basically is going to help you choose your stats and your filters. You can mess around here with the time frame along with the rounds played to make sure that you're getting yourself the right sample, especially as you start to build and chop stuff out a little bit. You want to make sure you're backing out to give yourself a sample that's large enough to be statistically relevant. You can also go into this section here, minimum rounds, which I think is crucial. Not as much in this week, but you do have a couple of guys that don't play a ton or have not, where you could kind of filter out the noise of a really small sample within the data set to make sure that you're not, giving yourself, they're not getting like credit for a really good 4-round sample where everyone else is pulling 50 rounds. That could throw off the model there too. So just some different ways to defaults to looking at things from a ranking standpoint. You can also look at things from an average strokes gained, total strokes gained, or the percentage of rounds gained when you're in the strokes gained section. So I think that's really important too. Let's go by, let's look at event season. Let's look at Florida, because this is going to capture a few things. I think this is going to give us
water danger.
Yeah,
Comp courses, similar courses, Bermuda greens, similar rough, similar time of year.
And the reason I talked about again last week that we didn't do this in California because I think there's such vast difference between some of the California courses where I think these Florida courses are more corollary courses to each other comparatively. So I do think that this is a worthwhile thing to look at. We'll back out to 3 years, trying to capture the last 50 rounds. We get pretty close on some of these guys, which I think is, I think makes it a pretty good thing. And we're getting almost everyone in the field. So I think there's like one guy, David Ford or something like that, which I don't even know that story. You see some smaller samples here for some guys, but we're getting a pretty good value here of what we're looking at. So confirmation bias, I like this split quite a bit. So we will go ahead and add this here to the.
These are guys I like.
Oh, look, these are guys that I'm okay betting on. So we will go. Let's see, last 3. I'm going to make a note. You don't have to do this, but I think we're going to have a bunch of maybe strokes gain totals. So I think this makes some sense. So look, last 3 years, last 50 rounds, Florida. Scoring conditions are difficult, Andy. So I think that does capture some of the stuff that you were talking about too. I like some of the ways that Ron's done this in the past. We can basically eliminate the easy conditions, but I think difficult / very difficult is a good way to look at things here to get a sense of, like you said, major championship golf. Scoring is tough here. Like you said, we're not really even touching the teens here often. Sometimes have some single-digit wins. So I think that this is going to be a sample worth looking at here. Let's see. So last 50 rounds, difficult, very difficult scoring conditions.
Yeah.
Some pretty good golfers. So these are also confirmation bias from like we're getting the top of the board as we would expect here.
Sure. And that's the thing too. And maybe a little advice, and maybe, I don't know, it's not like I picked the winner last week, but when you start whittling it down like that and start adding conditions to make the sample size smaller, I tend to go towards more basic splits, more basic stats and data. I'm not going like, hey, I'm going to add all these wind conditions and scoring conditions on this kind of greens and then look at, approach from 125 to 150, like a very granular chunk of data. Like when I do break, like, looking at this, I'm almost happy half the time just grabbing total, just strokes gain total. How are you playing overall in these conditions? Not, a smaller chunk of data like approach or ball striking, or, not that those are that much smaller, but, I usually go top level when I start breaking out. And I notice you tend to do that too, but I just thought it'd be worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Otherwise, you're getting into some really weird data that might not be very prescriptive at all.
1,000%, because that's really what we're trying to do, right? Like, and I wouldn't overfit too. We've talked about this, and we'll talk about it every time because you never know. Someone's watching for the first time. I just wouldn't combine a bunch of these conditions at once. You can. You're going to have to back out to a sample size that is like 5 years. And even then, you're probably going to have a really small number of rounds that qualify. So like, I wouldn't overfit. I would do a couple of these at a time. Like I wouldn't do, difficult, very difficult scoring conditions on long, very long courses with very strong fields, small fields, Florida. Like you're basically looking at on a single event. And that's not something that's going to be very, very prescriptive to move forward. So yeah, be very careful with overfitting conditions. I would just pick a few at a time. So yeah, we did difficult, very difficult scoring conditions, and we just looked at total strokes gained. So I think I think it's a really good place because again, we're looking at some very difficult golf courses and some, we're getting kind of fed the top of the board, which is what we're looking to do as well. Some of the other stuff, like Ron mentions that I really don't, I feel like it's almost double counting, like field strength. Yeah, that's okay to me. Looking at like small field event type, I don't know how actionable that is. Like, I don't know that that's a button that I'll ever click per se. What are your thoughts on like looking at event type small field?
I mean, it has to be a big sample, but I don't know. I guess, what would you want to look at in that?
I really don't. That's kind of my point. Is that it?
Yeah, some of these splits, I don't know. Maybe it is worth looking at, like, not something you'd add to a model per se, not something we'd click the plus button on, but maybe looking at a bigger sample of like how have people in general played in those? Are there guys who don't play well? So it's silly, we have that when we get out to the West Coast where it's like, hey, this guy does not like pro-ams. He doesn't play well in them. He's not a bad Florida player. Or a bad California player. He's a bad pro-am player. And, there's some guys that like certain kinds of tournaments. So maybe something worth looking at, but not something we're going to add to the model.
We'll move to off the tee. You mentioned total driving. Ron made the case that it is a good total driving week. And again, total driving, you can hover over any of these stats. It tells you what the specific detail of the stat is. Total driving adds players' ranking and driving distance with their ranking and driving accuracy. Obviously, lower number better. Kind of a noisy stat, but again, I don't hate it at times. I do think it tells a decent story. There are some other ways I think that we can, tie into some of this too. I don't think I just do total driving, but I'm okay with it here. I can see we're ranked here by strokes gained off the tee. Do you want to put any other filters on it, or do you think just raw total driving is something you want to add?
I use total driving in mine just as so obviously I like it, but I mean that or accuracy. Depends how you feel about distance, I guess. I think it's been one that's shown up with some of the winners, but I'm not sure if it's the reason. I think it's some of the guys with distance have great club head speed and they're hitting their long irons better. Or maybe I was wrong to add that. I should have leaned more into accuracy because this rough sucks.
Yeah.
You really not only want to be, in the right spot or not only in the fairway, but you want to be in the right spot.
We'll do total driving. I think it's interesting. There's another thing too, and I saw Ron looked at it too, is apex. Because again, holding these greens is super hard. So looking at a player's, height apex is interesting here as well. So look, total driving, last 50. Again, so many ways to skin the cat. Do we want to do anything else in the driving bucket?
It's probably good. I don't want to go too much into that.
Approach, again, we're capturing some of the approach stuff in some of the strokes gained total stuff. But again, if you're ever going to double count approach things, it is the stickiest of all statistics and the thing that's going to matter the most. We can get into some of the specific buckets when we get into the fairway approach accuracy and rough approach accuracy. But is there anything that you have? I have an opinion here. I want to hear anything that you have here in terms of the approach ranges that we need to be looking at. Not the ranges, but the section.
I just straight up did greens and regulation percentage.
Okay.
Guys over a big sample who can find greens. And I know maybe we could split that out by something. I just went overall, like who are the guys that no matter what the conditions are, they're finding greens, finding ways to get close in their proximity. So maybe you go into difficult green and regulation accuracy courses where it's lower than average, where it's I don't know what our cutoff is for this, but I'm sure we just take the average and then there's a bucket of here's all the rounds where greens and regulation was much more difficult than the average round. Yeah, that's something I'd look at for sure.
Yeah, so look at the last couple of years. 2022 when Scotty won, greens and reg for the week, 54.7%. That is 11% worse than a tour average event. The year before that, right around same bucket, 8.5% below an average tour event. Last year, I think it was up a little bit, but not by much. 58, so 6% below a tour average event. So holding these greens is very hard. And I think this tells a story that I think is useful. So we are looking at greens and reg accuracy difficult, greens and reg percentage. Jake Knapp at the top here. So this is again like, what do we want to do with this?
Minimum rounds. Yes. I don't know. Like Jake Knapp's just good though.
He's also very good, right? Like so, I don't hate
leave him in there.
Yeah, like this is the subjective thing for you to add. The rest of guys are getting here some smaller samples. But not a ton. And, no one, again, the rest of the field right behind Knapp, I think is who we're expecting to see here, which is not surprising, but Knapp's going to get a little boost on a really small sample, but I think it actually is confirming what we think about this guy as well. I think he's actually pretty damn good. Hits the ball really far. So his, distance and apex height, I think are going to be things that matter too. So greens and reg percent difficult. Again, I think that's a good way to do it. You mentioned the approach buckets. We can look at this from a fairway or rough standpoint. Last year, you're looking at, a little bit below average from like the 150, 175, 200, but still, a lot of shots from there, about 35% of your approach shots. But then you get into the longer stuff that I think matters even more, where your 200 to 250 plus is like, around 35% of the approach shots this week. That is significantly above a tour average event. So do we want to do anything with the smaller buckets or just go to the 200 buckets?
So I just clicked fairway 200 plus, assuming like, hey, if you're trying to hit 200 plus from this rough, like you're dicked anyway. I don't know. Like there's no saving you at that point.
Yeah.
If you're that inaccurate where, you need that shot repeatedly.
Yeah. Some of them you're just, you get the run off of the green and off the fairway and you're kind of donezo, even though the shot was pretty good. So we'll add the fairway there. I'm going to add the rough one and then we can wait a little bit less. Cause I think your point is accurate. At that point you maybe less trying to stick it by the hole. You're just trying to, get it up on the green, which I think is just to save you there a little bit. I can see who's the top here. So David Ford is the guy we were talking about earlier. We're going to sample out David Ford because we don't want him to get a ton of credit for that.
Yeah,
bucket.
he played like the RSM. He's like a 20-year-old kid that I think he might be collegiate still. Like I think like an exemption.
He's going to be in trouble this week. So, all right. You can see here lots of different ways to bucket this out from an approach standpoint: fairway, rough, or just straight approach numbers, which I think matters a ton. Around the green matters a lot here because we talked about these greens are hard to hold. There's the ability to look at scrambling through the rough versus short grass, and we talked about how this is a rough. The aprons here have been grown out over the years and it is no longer short grass. It is rough. But do you want to do anything in terms of? I'm not a sand save guy. I know there's a lot of sand here. I just kind of statistically noisy from my opinion. Not all bunkers are the same as well. So that's kind of
sand scrambling around the green or nothing.
Yeah.
Like keeping this one simple for sure.
Okay. So you're gonna do scrambling or scrambling rough? Any
Yeah,
preference?
Scrambling rough I don't hate because of, like you said, some of that long, it's less collection area. I mean, unless I'm wrong here, like the collection areas aren't there. It's like if you're rolling off, you're rolling into long stuff.
Yep. And again, some confirmation bias looking at this stat of some guys that have played well here in the past. Home has had some nice finishes. Chris Kirk has been really competitive here over the years. Zal hasn't been here a bunch, but has played well. Brennan Todd, again, another guy that, not necessarily you would think built for this place, but has played pretty well here. So that does make a little bit of sense. And I think that's okay too, to look at these stats when you filter them out before you add them to your model. Like, does that spit out something that makes sense? Is this something that I do want to capture? I think that's an okay thing to do here too. Putting. You want to do putting, scoring. Again, we have a little bit of the putting from a strokes gained total Florida standpoint. What are your thoughts on putting, scoring, or anything like that?
Yeah, I did a Bermuda split, and actually I went cuter than normal. I went 3 putt avoidance on Bermuda over like, and again, I once I clicked on it, I'm like, shit. I went back a couple years. I'm like, I need a big sample of this, but Bermuda isn't like Paspalum. It isn't something goofy. There are plenty of rounds on Bermuda, so you're getting a fair size sample, I think.
Okay, we'll do that there.
But yeah, I waited heavier than I normally would have too. Just like guys who get on Bermuda and don't give the tournament away. I'm not looking to win on Bermuda. I just want someone who's not going to lose it.
Yeah. All right, I like it. It's a little different. 3 putt avoidance. We'll go last 50 Bermuda. All right. I didn't X out of my other stuff, so I'm gonna have some. I think I'm gonna have some Puerto Rico stats in my model when we go hit the button here.
That's a button I should add. It's just clear everything.
Yeah. These are difficult par threes. It's not something that I want to weigh, but again, you can look at that. Again, it can be a tiebreaker or thoughts. It's up to you. I want to look at this because I think it was interesting. I saw Ron do it here. Looking at apex heights, you can look at club head speed too. These are like, I think leading indicators of the ability to maybe hold a green or get out of the thick rough a little bit easier. And it's up to you if you want to like actually weigh it or model it. But I do think it does tell somewhat of an interesting story in terms of what we'd expect here to have some success. So yeah, I mean, like some of these guys hit the ball far. Club head speed guys are long off the tee. Yeah. Any thoughts to adding either of these, or just to think interesting to look
I mean,
at?
you can do. We can do whatever we want.
I'm gonna click on apex height and have some more confirmation bias here. And
yeah, I mean, it's gonna be some of the same guys with the driving stuff.
Yeah. We won't add it, but I think it's interesting to look at the top. If you're listening to the podcast, Keegan Bradley, tops in the apex height, Wyndham Clark, Benny Ann, Sammy Valimaki. I have never seen Sammy and Jeff Feinberg in the same place together at the same time. That's all I'm going to say. Who knows? Could be something there. Ricky Fowler, Steven Yeager, our guy Ludwig, who feels inevitable, Jason Day, Mackenzie Hughes, not someone I would expect to be here from an apex height standpoint. Cam Young, Rory there kind of. So again, something to look at. I'm not adding it, but I think that's enough unless there's something that we did not capture that you think you want to add.
Yeah, let's take a look at the final number here and then get into some of the guys we bet.
Okay. Create the mixed condition model. I'm going to back up some stuff. Yeah, here. So this is my very basic Puerto Rico model that I got to take out. We got a bunch of stuff. No, I want to take island and ocean out as well. That is also a Puerto Rico one. So what do we got? What do we want to do? We want to anchor with I think our top two here are the anchor stats.
25%. Yeah, 20 each.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say you're already at 25, so you don't want to go terribly more, but yeah, a lot of the other stuff is kind of weird. Like, the putting we can have pretty low, like 10%. It's still putting, guys. Like, it's not predictive. It's gonna win tournaments, but you're never gonna see it coming. Total driving, probably 15. Like, it's up to 65. Leaves you 35 to split among 4. Greens and regulations, probably 15, man. And again, you're double counting with the next stuff. Okay. You can probably make those each pretty small.
Yeah. Let me do this.
Ooh,
fancies.
Mess up the numbers. 85. You have 15 to spend between the fairway and rough, and probably make those 7.5 each too.
Yeah. I think your point here is pretty valid though. So yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it that way. All right. We're gonna have something added very soon that will do the math for you, so you won't have to do your math in your head. Expect that here shortly. So this is Andy Noonan betting Bay Hill. All right. We will click this and have it as an expert ranking for you to be able to look at. You can see if you scroll down, I could save a ton of them. We're working on some of the logic in the background so that you can, have some like rolling form stuff or some like, whatever you want to do to be able to adjust and run regardless of the fields. Currently, if you ran it for the Scottish fields, it's going to want to run again for the Scottish field, but we're working on updating that for you soon. All right, let's see what this bad boy spits out. Save and generates. I think we're gonna get Rory and Scotty at the top, I would expect in some form. And okay. Scotty number 1, Vic number 2, Rory 3, Cam Young 4, Corey Connors 5. I get a lot of ball striking in here, so that makes a lot of sense. Matthew Fitzpatrick 6.
Corey was pretty high in mine too. I'm like, oh, weird. What did I do again?
Corey Connors came out first in the model that I built on the show here last week, which was gave me some pause. And yeah, I did not move on anything there, but it was interesting. Yeah, Fitzpatrick 6, Lowry 7, Keegan 8, Jake Knapp getting a nice little bump there. 9, Chris Kirk 10. Don't hate that at all. Homa, Sanjay rounding up the top 12. Again, some other familiar names here that make a ton of sense as you get into the top 20. So yeah, I mean, look, Scotty is there's outside of the 3-putt avoidance, which is not surprising. He's 47th out of the 69 guys. He's, top 10, top 20, and basically everything else, which is, again, not super surprising here. So Vic and Rory, I mean, Rory, without that water ball on Saturday, which what he got like a triple or whatever. And then he was absolutely dialed in on Sunday, could not make a putt. The ball striking was just absolutely, I mean, he was giving himself birdie looks, just bombing away off the tee, finding the fairways. It was impressive. So it was probably pretty frustrating for anyone that had Rory in one and done, or if you went to the well at the top of the board on Rory last week, like, man, he was good. So, these three make a ton of sense to me. Any takeaways or any guys that, get into the betting card or guys that you're considering?
Yeah, I'm probably betting Zal just because the number's big. But I mean, there's a couple other guys there that obviously have piqued my interest. And you talked about your on-brand bets that you made. Like, I'm not even gonna let you. I'm gonna spoil it. Like, yeah, you bet Keegan, but that was a huge number. What are you gonna do? Zal's gonna pop pretty high. Maybe not as good out. Oh yeah, like it says here, not as good out of the rough, but that's a smaller sample. I'm fine with him at like 42. I was really concerned early in the year with him, how he was playing right off the bat, but you can get, 40s or better. That's someone I definitely looked at. I wish Oberg was a little better price, but again, you have to reset your brain and realize, like, it's not a 20-1 against a field of everyone in the world. It's 20-1 against a smaller field.
He's already 21 in those markets too, though. Like, he just is.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just very, very hard to wrap your head around those and like get excited about betting some smaller numbers like that. So
yeah.
It is a little tough. And then I guess we both talked a little Homa. Like, sell me this pen, because basically my betting card right now is Zalatoris. Like, sell me Homa, and I guess sell me Vic at his price, because he's someone I looked at for one and done right off the bat.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Vic. I bet Vic here the last 2 years. He's been competitive. I think he has benefited, I think, from the change of the around the green apron being a little bit thicker versus some of the short grass stuff. And I think that's kind of been a leading indicator in the shift of his results here versus the previous years. Now, again, he's just been an improved golfer that's been ascending. Again, I'm a little biased. It's a guy that I'm always looking for reasons to bet. It hasn't been a great early season run for him, but I also just don't want to overreact to a small sample of him not being awesome. He's still been really good and been competitive. So I like this fit for him. The ability to be long and straight off the tee is great. The long iron stuff is, historically over a larger sample has been really, really good. And I think he probably took a little bit of time off since we saw him last at the Genesis, and I think he's probably getting dialed in. So part of it was a numbers play. It opened at 12. I knew we would probably get a little bit of a bigger number, drifted out to 16. Caesars, if you happen to have Caesars, they have a Vic boost basically to bet at 19, $100 max bet at 19 on Vic, which I was going to bet there's 16 and found the 19. So I like that number quite a bit on Vic. So just if you're telling me Vic at basically double Rory and Scotty, who I like actually considered, then I'm taking Vic. I don't think that there's that Rory or Scotty have double win equity of Vic here. So and
that's where my head started at, especially for one and done. I need to use a big name. Like Scotty, Rory, probably some other spots I could feel very comfortable using. Well, obviously Vic too, but I like him a lot here. It's 16.5 at Chris. It's probably a bet. Homa's 40.
Yeah, so Chris has got some numbers on some guys that I really like. So I'm
40. Like, how do I just not click that right now?
I don't know that you don't click that. I think that old like California Homa thing has kind of died. He's played really well here. He's just played better golf on harder courses. His wins have come on harder courses. Even though he hasn't like shown up as well in the majors, I think that kind of shifted a little bit last year. But again, you win. At what was the one we had in like the Maryland, DC area a couple years ago where he won. And then won Quail Hollow. It was won Quail Hollow a couple times. Genesis. Like, these are harder golf courses. Max plays his best there. So does Zalatoris. So I've been torn on Zalatoris and Max. I don't think I'm clicking both. The other one that's
I ain't scared because I got a small card.
I know. I was considering actually just dialing back finishing position bets and stuff this week and just kind of going heavier on outrights, which is probably very stupid. But again, I don't want to leave anyone off. The other one that's really strange, and I want to get your thoughts. He's not popping very well here for us as well, but has played here twice. He's finished top 4 both times he's played here. Is not, he's 14th here in our model. Jordan Spieth is 26th on Caesars. He's like 16, and in some other spots like 20. I don't know what your Chris number is. Let me see what Spieth is on Chris.
It feels like
29.
such a live bet where you either you live bet him at some point because the numbers drifted and he can score here. He's comfortable here. He's got plenty of experience. He can go on a run, and then that live bet either gains a shitload of equity as he pushes into the contention, or he does 3 stupid things and goes away and it doesn't matter. So I have it written down as like Jordan Spieth live. It's something I'll be looking at later in the week.
Yeah, I like it. So that's that's been kind of that mix for me is those 3 guys. The more I've looked at Jordan this morning, but yeah, Zalatoris, gosh, the Chris number is fantastic because domestics you're looking at basically 33 is the best of the number. Same thing with your Homa number, where Homa is 25 in some spots, 30 basically is the best number you could find on FanDuel and Caesars. And then, you have a 40 and change on Chris.
Yeah. And again, both of those guys are going to be around even money for top 20s. Probably going to have Homa and Sal top 20 bets at like plus 100, plus 110.
Keegan, I got a 90. I got a Keegan 90.
Keegan's your bomb. Like we're not doing bombs this week because we don't have to. It's not that tournament. But Keegan at 90 is our bomb for the week. Then
let's be honest. I was betting Keegan at 60. So like Keegan at 90 was a gift from the high heavens. And like look, the last 3 years, Keegan's been right around the top 10. We looked at some of the stuff. Like we look at strokes gained total Florida. He's second here. The Apex stuff we didn't even put in the model. He was first. The 200 plus stuff. 7th and 4th. So like all the things we actually do want to weight here, Keegan has been really good at. He's dragged down by his scrambling in the rough. Otherwise he'd be even higher than 8th in the model. So yeah, I mean, Keegan finishing position bets are going to be on the card as well. And I love having the 90 in pocket. I think he likes it here quite a bit. So yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of the meat for it. So I know we went long. You want to touch on anything?
Go back to the main page. Let's do 5 minutes on the API. You pull up your expert model that you built. I'll just mention some quick things on the API on the Puerto Rico. We're down in Puerto Rico. It is a Commonwealth. Same kind of thing. Obviously the same dates. It's just the alt event that's running alternate to this. 132 person field, including your defending champ, Nico Echevarria, whose name I'm thinking Echevarria. Grand Reserve Golf Club, Rio Grande. This is sitting in the foothills of a rainforest. A little different than what we're getting in Florida, in Orlando. So it's there's going to be some wind exposed parts to it, but also some that isn't so much. Inland kind of makes me think of, why can't I think of it? I have the lighthouse in my brain.
Oh, what, Harbortown?
Harbortown makes me think of Harbortown a little, where there's going to be some wind exposed stuff, but also some stuff that's covered up.
Yeah.
This is a composite. Like there was like 5 9-hole courses down there at this resort. So they're using a little bit of everything to put together an 18-hole event. It is Paspalum, similar to what you saw at Mexico a few weeks ago. Same as like Corrales, Punta Cana. So it's going to be simple. If you want to use comp courses, you can use those: Punta Cana, El Chameleon, El Cardinal, Mexico Open, all those, or just click places with Paspalum, I suppose. There maybe is a little bit of comp to, I've seen some people mention the Sony, the RBC, things like that, but a little, it's a resort course, like scoring, greens and regulation, approach, scoring. Don't overthink this thing. Hoegaard's your favorite. Burger, rye are right there. God, that might be what I'm having for lunch, a burger with a rye. Like you'd mentioned burger a little. Somebody I wanted to maybe bet was Rio Hisatsune. He's like 25 to 1.
All right.
Oh man, I logged out. So I don't know who popped in your model. I was not looking. I was reading some notes I had.
Yeah. So if you look, if I I didn't mess around with changing the weights too much, but here's what this is: strokes gained total This is just the last 18 months. I went strokes gained. I think this is strokes gained tee to green on island or ocean courses, which I think we get a little bit of that too, that we are talking about. And then birdie or better, because you got to score, as you mentioned. This is low. I think we went in the low 20s last year. Greens and reg was kind of something that I saw is something that stuck out a little bit. You got to have a pretty high greens and reg rate here to contend, and then driving distance, because this is course stretches a little bit. So those are kind of the main buckets. Your Ryo here is number 2 in strokes gained total, which is kind of a nice baseline stat. But yeah,
these weird events, and I saw this in someone's preview too. Like, you don't have to be coming in with form to win one of these. Like, yeah, that's how all these stupid alt events are. It's somebody who hasn't even been playing well that comes in, but obviously that is something that drew me to him. He is one of the favorites, and he's just playing. I think he's one who has the biggest kind of ramp to where he can ascend to this year out of some of these other names. So I like him at like 25. That's probably my only bet.
Yeah. So, I took a blood oath somewhere along the lines to make sure I'm backing Aaron Wise. I've waited, and luckily waiting, there's some 70s out on Aaron Wise, who's, his only wins have come on coastal courses. So that's a thing. The other one that's interesting to me is another friend of the show. When we were going to the well on Austin Eckroat last year, we were also going to the well on Sam Stevens. 60s are available on Sam Stevens here. He came out 4th year in the model, hits it a mile, has been playing decent golf. I don't hate it. I mean, what we've seen here, I mean, not great, but okay. Missed the cut the last couple of times out, but again, hitting in a mile. Again, I think he's better than some of the other guys in this field. And so Sam Stevens is interesting to me comparatively. Like, he probably should be a little bit further away from Aaron Wise, since Wise has been kind of a no-show of late. But again, probably sprinkling bombs here probably be the way to go. Nasty 8 Lashley also up there, but he's a little short in the odds board. He's played these.
I was going to say he's certainly not a bomb in a place like this. Lashley, yeah. I did see some love for Lashley. He's something I would consider betting as well. So,
yeah, he's 40 on Lashley. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
If you guys have spent more time than us in Puerto Rico and you have some hot tips, leave them in the YouTube comments. If you followed, if you follow along in podcast form, obviously we're on Twitter at andymsfw, at rynoonan, at betspertsgolf. You can tweet us, DM us. If you're in the Discord, tag us. If you have some hot tips for Puerto Rico, I'm going to dig in a little more if I get some time. But for the most part, it's just maybe a couple of outrights. I do want to add, that's what I'm looking for, actually. Send me some bombs, because I'm betting a 25-1 in a full field event. I need 2 or 3 bombs to lay with that one too. So hit us up. Hit the thumbs up if you watched on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple or Stitcher or whatever.
I think podcast. Stitcher's dead. Yeah,
I know. I said Stitcher. I meant like Android. I'm trying to think how people list on Android. Google.
I'm an Android. I'm a Spotify guy. I used to be a Stitcher guy.
I used to use something called Podcast Addict. I like that app the best. I think a lot of Android people just use whatever app they like. So just whatever. 5 stars. Hit the thumbs up. Good luck. We'll see you next week. Have fun. And again, if you have questions about the Vivid deal, the one and done deal with our sponsors, Pool Genius, or anything else, hit us in the DMs.